Do you believe in the paranormal? Why or why not? I never did before starting my current job, but I do now. I work in an impound yard. We get dozens of wrecked vehicles a day. Some are fatalities. Weird stuff happens in my yard. There was this one fatality that had the airbags drooping down over the windows, but when security walked past, the airbag was stuck up in the door, so he opened the door and let the airbag fall back down. 30 minutes later he's doing his rounds again and the airbag is propped back up again. So he lowers it again and he hears a woman's voice saying, "Don't shut it, it's dark out." Also, there's no attic in the main building, but at night you can hear people walking and talking above the ceiling. The outbuilding has been locked and empty for years, but a light in the upstairs window goes on periodically. Anyone who has worked a night shift at this yard believes in ghosts. I know that logically ghosts aren't real, but I've experienced enough shit to say that the science just isn't understood yet. Something happens. Energy gets stuck or timelines converge or something. I really would like my dead housemate to stop knocking shit off the table and slamming doors though. It's freaking my new housemate out. I never did until a paranormal incident happened. I had my daughter in 2008. And not long after, my great-grandmother died at the age of 100 years old. I mourned her, then I moved on. Fast forward 3 months later, I had a house in Springfield, Missouri, and one night I got up to go to the bathroom, and keep in mind, my daughter's room was down the hall where if the door was open I could see her. As I walked into the bathroom, my daughter's door was open. And what I saw was either creepy or amazing. I saw my dead great-grandmother standing over my daughter's crib. I said, "Big Red?" That's what I called her. Then she turned around, ran towards right into my face, kissed me on my cheek, then faded away. This actual happened, because I remember being awake. I take the pragmatic route on it. For example, if you're renovating a house and find a laminated card of a saint buried in the basement, what would you do with the card? I put it back exactly where I found it because I don't see a reason to mess with things. I've always been and still I'm kind of a skeptic, but I did have one experience that made me question things. A cat I had for 8 years passed away in late 2020. Last year, on that exact day, around the exact time of night that he died, I was laying in bed and looking through old pictures of him, when I suddenly felt a weight next to me in the spot he always used to lay in at night. I don't know if thinking about him made my brain recreate that feeling, or if I was tired and hallucinating, or if that little turd really is haunting me and just wanted a quick snuggle, but it felt real as day to me. I think it's arrogant to believe that our human intellect is the acme of all understanding. I say yes, I do believe in the paranormal because I have had a number of experiences, very few, to be sure, that tip my scales of belief toward there being more to this world than can be measured or quantified or calculated within current human understanding. And one thing that I actually did measure. I suspected that a certain attic area of a very old school building that I used to work at was haunted. I decided to put it to the test. So the year was 2001. I was working as a music and art teacher in a little Catholic elementary school that was built before 1920. Lots of spooky stuff went on in that building after hours. I can tell lots of stories. The story I'm bringing to you now has to do with an attic-type storage room above the school's third-story theater. There was this tiny storage area that was an absolute treasure trove with about 100 years worth of artifacts and memorabilia. I was sorting through it one day when I ran out of steam. Long story short, while I was treasure hunting, and I came across this collection of photographs from probably about the 1940s or 1950s. Now I know that I am skipping over a whole lot, but so much weird stuff had already gone down, that this place already gave me the heebie-jeebies. I thought something was up. I decided to put my suspicions of the paranormal to the test. There is a thick stack of maybe 2 or 3 dozen photographs. They were all photographs of a parish picnic. All of them in black and white, all of them had those zigzag, pinking shears edges. I had already experienced objects being found in places where I hadn't left them. It had gotten to a point where it was a little much, a little far-fetched, to keep talking up the finding of objects in weird places to my own misplacement, or somebody else moving them. Here's where I made my experiment. First of all, I was the only able-bodied person on staff. You had to climb a rickety ladder to get where I was to begin with. I was the only one that was not 90 years old or 200 pounds. I was the only one able to climb up that ladder who had a key to the building. Second, I conducted this experiment on a whim. I set it when it was twilight about 8 p.m. I checked on it at 6:30 a.m. the next day. Third, I told nobody what I did, so what should I do? I took the stack of photos. I looked through all of them. I put my favorite picture, it was of a group of young men, posing and looking tough and adorable, on the top. I even marked it on the back with the word top. I laid the photos in a very neat stack in the corner of the attic/storage room area, with a brick on top. I came back in the wee hours of the next morning. I found the stack of photos, you bet I did. But they were not in the corner. The brick was in the corner, but the photos were in a very neat stack in the center of the room. The top photo was a picture of a bunch of old ladies. I have run through every explanation I can think of. The least far-fetched requires belief in the paranormal. Yep, but only because I've directly seen lots of things that I absolutely cannot explain away with conventional science, despite really wishing I could. The worst was the So Haunted trailer in Montana. Wish I could point it out on a map. I'm sure the family would love to sell it to scientists for study since they can't exactly live in the dang thing. I only slept there because I was homeless and it was cold out. You know that scene in horror movies where nobody is in a kitchen but all the cabinets and drawers are opening and slamming shut, whole place just going bonkers like the kitchen is having a tantrum? I've seen that in real life. It was normal for that trailer to do that sometimes. Last year we brought my baby home from the hospital. That same night my older kids had gotten a horrible bug that gave them a fever. I gave them Tylenol and put them to bed and then went back to go to bed as I was recovering from a C-section and I was exhausted. I was in the bathroom putting medicine on my dog's ears when my husband walked by and said I needed to check the lock on the window by my daughter. It was a weird thing but I went to do it, and found her asphyxiating on vomit and having a seizure. Her face was purple and she was completely silent. She is alive because I checked that window, and when I asked my husband he had already been in bed, he never asked me to check the window. I think that dream is mostly gone. As a Gen X I grew up with all the bad videos and photos of ghosts, Sasquatch, alien spaceships, etc. We thought that maybe one day when someone gets a better pic we'll have proof. Today, half the people on the planet have HD cameras on them at all times and we got nothing. I did paranormal investigation for years. I was paid to do the audio and video as well as making tech needed to find the paranormal, like electromagnetic and hotspot detectors. I've seen a lot of unexplainable things in my time. One paranormal confirming experience in particular was in a hidden graveyard for children that died in a flood after a flash flood hit their schoolhouse. During the investigating, the toys on the graves would jump between different graves, children laughing was heard, and deep blue dancing lights that looked like they were playing were seen all over. Pretty much everyone that I take to see this in Miami experiences something. Yes, there are millions of ghost stories. Every single person that has seen a ghost can't be a liar. So that means some of the stories must be legitimate. I've read accounts by entire squads of American soldiers that experienced paranormal phenomena. Not one person telling a story, but encounters corroborated and retold among a group. What would be their motivation to lie? Especially collectively as a group. Especially soldiers. I think the common concept of what a ghost is, trapped deceased person, isn't correct. Why no happy ghosts ever? But I think we're getting closer and closer to being able to tangibly measure a phenomenon that we as a species are not ready to understand. Imagine the impact globally when the concepts of heaven and hell are destroyed. The confirmation of an afterlife, or possibly the realization that we are some type of simulation. That ghosts are literally glitches in our matrix. I was raised in a non-religious, very secular home. No superstitions, no myths or legends, or ghost stories. That being said, now that I'm older and wiser, yes, I absolutely believe in the paranormal, but not in the way we understand it. Just like how there are things that exist we cannot outright perceive, ultraviolet light, radiation, viruses. There are likely many more things that exist that interact with us on a regular basis that we have yet to have the ability to detect. No. There's no evidence from thousands of years of a civilization that want to believe in life after death. I did have a creepy dream experience though. About 17 years I was around 13 and I was in the Scouts. We did this which was a rare but exciting thing. There was about 20 of us from 12 to 18 and we hiked to a cabin in the woods to stay the night. We followed this trail called the Beverly 20 miles, so we were knackered. Late at night/early morning it suddenly started banging. It was like 50 people were outside banging against the walls. And we were in the middle of nowhere. Understandably it freaked us all out, but I remember kind of being excited too. It was intermittent for about an hour and stopped. One by one we all needed a piss and the toilet block was 100 meters away and nobody wanted to go, so we all decided we'd go together and leave together. We're in the toilet block and suddenly the light shatters and the door slams shut. We're all in pitch black and fumbling for torches, flashlights. Some of us outside and some of us inside. I was outside and we didn't shut it, and it would have been hard to slam it shut from the inside without anyone seeing, and it was a really still summer night with no wind. We legged it back to the cabin and the light came back on the toilets as we were running away. But we talked and all heard the bulb go. None of us slept that night, and the creepiest thing was that when talking to my grandma about places I'd camped a few years later, she mentioned that a guy who used to play on my granddad's rugby team hung himself in the cabin we were sleeping in years before. She don't have an explanation for anything that happened that night. There's plenty of plausible explanations. A bunch of people could have decided to randomly bang on the walls of a cabin in the middle of nowhere and disappear. One of us could have smashed the light and screwed a new one in when we were all freaked out. But nothing I've ever come up with seems plausible, but I'm not going to say it's ghosts because no evidence supports that. Still freaky though. I do. But the craziest thing I ever saw was bartending at an old tin ceiling bar. Weird haunting stuff had happened, like bottle caps being thrown at people in the back when no one was there, or hearing people run up the stairs. But one night I was closing and my ex-husband was there, having a couple of drinks. I was counting my till. Just for context, I am Hindu and didn't grow up with the same visual ideas of what a ghost or demon would look like as in the West. Also, I worked at this bar for over 10 years, knew every shadow, glimmer of light and so forth. I saw the ink black shadow thing move way across the room to my left. It was big and just swooped through quickly. I saw my ex's eyes go to it, but he kept talking, and I just chalked it up to being tired. But then right in front of me, like 10 feet away, it slowly swooped across the room. Like demon smoke from a movie, which is something I never believed in. My ex clearly saw it too, and I asked, "Did you just see that?" And he said he did and described it. So we both saw it. It wasn't an actual shadow, it seriously looked like something out of a movie. After that, I wouldn't close by myself anymore. Either he'd come down or I'd buy a kitchen guy a drink or the closing server. No, because I've never seen or heard anything that couldn't be explained with simpler answers, and anyone who says they have, I don't believe. I would love to be proven wrong though. Not in the way people mean when they ask that. People experience stuff, I'm not saying they don't. It's just not, ghosts and shit. I experienced some spooky shit myself when I was younger, and the common factor was always that I was scared, that it was spooky. It was in that building's spooky bare basement that was being refinished, or on the side of the highway at 2 a.m. when I had to pee between stops, or when I was completely alone in my house's basement, or at midnight after having a dream in that house my family moved into that none of us were happy about. But here's the thing, all that spooky shit? It stops when, instead of giving in to that little tingle in the back of your neck, you throw your arms wide and tell it to fight you. It stops when you try to touch it, see it, understand it, record it, or explain it. It just stops. Because it isn't real. People who have lived in that one spooky old house that they know was haunted because they'd see things at night or something would open door and mess with doorknobs don't ever set up cameras or motion sensors, or, hell, just sleep with the lights on. People who hear people talking in the walls don't try to record it. Because it's just reaction. That is the phenomena. The paranormal is people's poor attempt to rationalize experiences that are the result of gaps in knowledge or quirks of our biology/psychology as external rather than internal phenomena. I've yet to experience or be presented with evidence which suggests otherwise in any meaningful sense. I'll believe it when it's replicated or studied in a controlled environment and at a point where there is solid proof. Other than that, I won't bother. I like to imagine alien life forms as titans the size of buildings or minuscule, or even able to glide on light or I'd. Little green/gray man seems dull to me. Imagine a spaceship gets next to Earth and a life form the size of Australia jumps out of it and hits the Earth with a massive hammer. The universe is so infinitely vast and planets/suns can get so big compared to us. The life forms that exist on there could be anything. I never did until I lived in a house someone had committed suicide in. Both my roommates, myself, and friends who came over all experienced weird shit that had no logical explanation at all. I've always framed it this way: I do not believe in ghosts. The sheer amount of people who have died is wild. Mostly not desirable deaths. So, if ghosts exist, we would talk about them like we talk about the weather. That said, if I were offered $100K to spend the night at a well-known haunt, that's an offer I would never take. Not me, but me and my brother used to live in this really old house. It was 140 plus years old, so obviously some weird shit went on and on and on. One time my brother was coming upstairs at like 12 at midnight, and in the corner of his eye saw a woman in a nightgown staring at him. One time my dad saw a figure of a man in a hat standing at the edge of his bed, also staring at him. Another time my sister had a cold and went to ask my mom to make her tea. It was around midnight as well, so my mom was heading downstairs and saw a woman in a nightgown, same as before, standing behind-ish a doorway so you could see part of the bottom nightgown in her leg. Glad we moved out of that place. I grew up thinking that ghosts and such were 100% fake, and I never believed in any of it. Until I moved to Mackinac Island, Michigan to work for the summer. I thought it would be fun to tag along with a few coworkers who were ghost hunting for a lark, and we got way more than we bargained for. In total, I spent 4 years on that island, and it turned me into a believer. I don't know what they should really be called, but ghosts and such absolutely do exist, and that rock is full of them. No, because anything that exists within the universe is part of the rules of the universe. If ghosts exist, then they can't be paranormal because they would obey the rules of the universe just like everything else. They would just be normal things we can't explain yet, but only if they exist. Yes. Experiences surrounding the deaths of my loved ones have made me realize something other than what I know of this world seems to be going on. And I say that as someone raised in an atheist/agnostic household and who is in science. Too many times in my life, things that scientifically could not exist turned out to be true. Rogue waves, ball lightning, all kinds of animals that were supposedly non-existent or extinct turned out to be alive and well. My house is haunted, and everyone has had personal experiences, and we all witnessed something at the same time. And if you're curious, the entire family was watching some football game, and we have this shelf in the living room, and everything on the shelf was being violently thrown off the shelf, as if someone just took their and slid stuff off as they walked by. It made absolutely no sense. Yes. I have seen and experienced a few things after my parents got their first house. I used to see two shadow-type figures. The only features I could make out were their eyes. It used to sound like someone was walking on the stairs at night, and as of last year, the living room TV has started turning on with the volume all the way up at random during the night. I'm not sure if there's a weird setting or update doing, but it freaks everyone out. Our back porch light has also been turned on during the middle of the night. If it wasn't for our alarm system, I'd think someone was in the house messing with us, but it never went off when those things occurred. I've had paranormal experiences while suffering through severe mental illness. It was very informative, in hindsight. I feel like mental illness can create experiences drawn from popular culture, so that, say, if you're religious, your hallucination may manifest in you having a conversation with God. But I strongly suspect mental illness was the cause of the first paranormal experience. Psychology is a very recent field. People in the past would assume something more external, like ghosts, the afterlife, demons, etc. So, no. I don't believe in the paranormal. I think this is just all in our head, and the source of it all is a long heritage of collective consciousness, from our ancestors trying to rationalize it without knowledge of psychology. Yeah. I've had 3 separate incidents in my life that I cannot fully explain. I've thought long and hard about each one and can come up with possible completely rational explanations, but since I cannot prove the rational explanation, I choose to believe that they could have been something paranormal. Absolutely yes. When I was 11, I went to Manila to visit my mom's family. They went out shopping and I was left at my aunt's house alone. In the room upstairs, as I was eating Pringles on the bed, I dropped one. When I went to pick it up, it shot under the bed and came back out half gone. Chalked it up to rats or something because, well, it wasn't exactly the living conditions of America. Spooked out though, I decided to sit on the staircase where I could still see the TV but have some sort of escape plan. Lol. On the corner of my eye, in the adjacent room, I see a dark figure pacing back and forth. I just slowly went downstairs and pretended it never happened. Now as a kid, I've had my fair share of imagining large furniture as dark shadows, but I shit you not, I saw what I saw in broad daylight. Second instance that happened was in my home at 17. I didn't necessarily see anything, but at night while sleeping, I'd have horrible dreams of some lady trying to pull me away from my body. It felt like I couldn't breathe and just felt weird, like I was under the influence or something, just extremely weak. This happened periodically, but I assumed I was just having nightmares. One day my boyfriend came over and we took a nap. When he got up to grab something to eat, I went to take a quick shower. He stayed in the living room and was surprised to see me come out the bathroom because he just had walked past my room and saw me laying in bed still. My room also had this eerie little door that you could open to this extremely tiny room, but I kept it shut with a dresser against it to completely close it off. One day a couple weeks after this incident, I asked my nephew why don't they like to stay the night with us, and he tells me he doesn't like the girl in my closet. Spooked me bad lol. After we moved away, I never had those dreams again. At 19, I moved in with my husband. One night I wake up and I hear footsteps down the hall. We lived with his dad at this point, and his dad usually stayed up late, so I didn't think anything of it. I try to close my eyes and go to sleep, but then I hear the footsteps come in the room. Door was closed and never opened, and the steps seemed to walk around the bed. Woke up the next day and went to the kitchen. All the cabinets and drawers were open. That was it though, but it freaked me out. Last memorable instance, I was now 22, living with my husband in our first home together. I was a stay-at-home mom and was alone at home with our kid. I kept hearing a child crying outside. I went out back to check around but couldn't see anything, but kept hearing it. We lived on base housing, so I assumed it was just thin walls. The next day when we wake up and come downstairs, all our drawers and cabinets were open once again. I'm 30 now, and just this year we've had our front door magically open at 1 in the morning. Camera picked it up, but front camera and living room camera didn't show anybody, until we discovered it upon waking up, as well as our camera inside repeatedly saying wake up in a child's voice. Different day though. I've just accepted it by now lol. While I can say each of these instances can be explained logically, it's just too much of a coincidence for me to confidently 100% say paranormal activity doesn't exist. I had a full-on poltergeist when I was 12. Other people saw things. The scariest was the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling. They would just black out all of a sudden, and it would feel like either you were rushing up at the ceiling or it was rushing down at you. My friends saw it and never slept over again. Years later I was making props for a haunted house. I saw a cast member lean out of the door. I said hi and went back to work. 20 minutes later the same cast member pulled up. I asked why he didn't say hi back. He hadn't been there that day but thought it was his dad's ghost. That looked just like him and loved that haunted house. I have an abundance of paranormal stories that may or may not make you a believer, but one that stands out and made me really question the afterlife begins in a stereotypical setting, a cemetery. In the summer of 2017 I joined a local paranormal group in the small coastal town I'm from. This historic town has seen war, plagues, and ultimately a lot of death. We decided to go to a local cemetery that dates back to the 1700s. I had previously gone through this place during the day a few weeks prior just to get a feel for it and to see if I was drawn to any place in particular within the area. This is important info. On the night of our hunt we used our 3D mapping system that showed if there was a spirit nearby, or in my case standing right next to you, it shows up as a stick person. We caught random spirits walking through the headstones and they communicated with us through the ovilus. When we decided to head out I started walking back through the dark towards the parking lot, not having any idea where I was. This is when I stopped and looked down. To my right was the gravestone of a 4-year-old girl, and it just so happened to be her birthday, August 21st. This is also the gravestone that I had been drawn to just weeks earlier, and somehow I ended up right back over there. Keep in mind that this cemetery is huge. It was pitch black except for some random street lights 200 yards away and our flashlights. And whoa, back to the story. I looked down at said gravestone and said happy birthday sweet girl, and when I did it felt like electricity wrapped around my lower half, and my friend who had the mapping system said, there's a small figure next to you and it looks like it's hugging your leg. So I then squatted down and held my arms out like a hug and felt warmth and comfort mixed with a little electrical energy wrapping itself around me, my friend confirming that the figure was indeed hugging me. I guess the little girl was happy I came back because she made it known she was there. I know this story sounds so far-fetched, but it truly happened. As I left I said happy birthday, told her to go find the light that I was sure her mommy and daddy were waiting for her, and said sweet dreams. As I said sweet dreams, the figure walked away and disappeared. This experience made me not so scared about the afterlife, however I have had other experiences that have truly scared me. To be continued. I always thought, it is a possibility, but I had never experienced anything which struck me as a paranormal event. My mother passed about 7 years ago, and when my father was alive, he passed from COVID 2 years ago. When my father was alive after my mother died, he would tell me stories of hearing the bathroom door open and the toilet flush every day at 7 a.m. One day I got off the phone with my dad and he had shared another story of my mom walking around and so forth. That evening I was in bed playing a video game on my tablet. All of the sudden, off to my right, just inches away from my shoulder, a cold spot formed and I could feel the cold air coming from the spot. It felt like I had opened the freezer door and the cold air you feel, but bone cold. At this time, it was early summer and the AC was not running and the house was at 72 degrees, and so I know the cold spot was not the AC or anything. The cold spot lasted about 30 seconds and then was gone. I just asked the question, "Is this you, Mom? Are you here?" All of the sudden I felt an impression in the bed next to my right leg, as if someone had sat down. I just spoke out and said, "If this is you, Mom, you're more than welcome here in my home." After that, I have never had another visit. When my dad was in the hospital dying of COVID, he looked over and said, "It is time for me to go see you, Mother," and the way he said it, it was like she was there waiting for him. He took out the oxygen, smiled and left. My 2 cents on this: I'm a follower of Hinduism, and in our culture and religion, when someone has passed away we cremate them and perform a particular ritual that stands out for me. We'll leave out the deceased person's favorite items when they were alive in small pots on some banana leaves, sometimes up to 20 favorite dishes of the person and their favorite belongings. This is done very close to the place they were cremated. Now, when my grandma died we did this and we left salines. She used to love them for some reason, cigarettes for my grandpa, other dishes he or she liked. We lived in a very closely knit community and the villages in our area are very prosperous due to good harvests. Now when we go to serve these dishes and we return, we are strictly said to never look back because the spirit may get distracted and fixate on you. So we avoided that. We leave it out at night and return on the morning. When we came back, it was shocking. It was the same for my grandpa and grandma, though they died a few years apart. The cigarettes were opened with human accuracy and some cig butts were lying around in the same spot. The dishes were half eaten and some completely. The saline packets were cut out using the scissors we left for grandma to use. She also didn't touch the dishes we expected her to not eat due to her appetite. I always theorized it had to be someone poor, but our village was very prosperous and no one would be stupid enough to eat someone's last meal, considered a huge omen. Was it a dog? A dog doesn't smoke or has hands. Would like everyone's thoughts/skepticism on this. Absolutely. I've worked in a number of healthcare facilities over the years. In all of them, really strange things happened. Some of them I was alone for, but some were experienced with a co-worker who saw and felt the very same thing. I'm a firm believer. We don't know as much as we think. We've only just scratched the surface. Oh hell yes. I've lived in a couple haunted places and had some pretty intense experiences. One house I lived in, within a week, I was asking the homeowner if it was haunted and he said it was, BG a woman. And I said I had seen her, especially in my dreams. Lots of crazy things happened in that house that didn't happen elsewhere. Oh my god, I have so many stories. I've seen heavy sliding doors open by themselves. The most recent post on my account is a photo I took and a story, but I'll tell a different one here. I worked at a fast food restaurant that is popular for its yellow arches. I was a barista and honestly my advice is don't work there, but that's not the point. I had a 7 to 10 p.m. shift, so it was short and I was by myself. This particular restaurant had the counter and kitchen in a separate side of the restaurant from the cafe where you had to lean over the counter to see the other place if you wanted to. I was alone in the cafe and the other staff couldn't see me unless they came over or looked through the cameras. We weren't busy, so I was doing my closing jobs when I heard a woman screaming outside. It was like she was screaming for dear life. This is a heavily populated area with no wild animals that could make that sound. I look around and don't see any customers concerned and assume I'm hearing things. This isn't unusual and I haven't been diagnosed with anything that could cause this, but often when I am alone I hear things like footsteps that aren't actually there. I have never heard voices in my life, but considering no one else was concerned and I have a slight history of auditory hallucinations, I shrugged it off and got back to work. I finished my packing up jobs, so I started polishing the stainless steel cabinets under the counter. My back was facing the cafe entrance and I was below the toaster when I heard a man's voice say sorry and automatically turned to say all good, assuming a coworker had come in and was asking me a question or something, saying like sorry to bother you, but no one was there. I stood up and checked over the counter to see if I had just overheard a customer talking, even though I heard it right behind me, but there were no customers in the store anymore. The next morning I was talking to my coworker about how I was hearing things and told her what happened, laughing at myself. She didn't laugh, she looked a bit shocked. She told me that 2 of my managers had separately told her they had seen a ghost around the toaster. For a while I thought the ghost must have played a prank on me and felt bad, so apologized, but I was telling my friend this story recently and she said she more assumed he was apologizing for someone else's actions. Believers in the paranormal, you skeptics shouldn't be so close-minded. You should be open to all explanations. Believers in the paranormal, when someone points out that paranormal incidents could be pranks or hoaxes or overactive imaginations, no, that is a completely ridiculous explanation. Sorry, but the thing about pranks and hoaxes and delusions is that we know beyond any doubt that humans are capable of doing this. Therefore, flatly ruling that out as an explanation is just stupid. It is certainly a far more reasonable explanation than assuming that ghosts must be real. I was always fascinated by haunted places, and I worked at the Masquerade in Atlanta. The place was a cotton mill that burned down, and all the workers were trapped inside. I saw some seriously unexplainable shit. Luckily, my friend also saw and heard things. I stayed in Al Capone's room in Tennessee that is supposedly haunted. You have to ask for the room and they are hesitant. I can't explain what happened there, except my 2-year-old daughter was straight up talking to someone. It was surreal. Anyway, I have to put my science aside for this. Basically, I have no clue, but I also used to break into closed-down psychiatric hospitals that used all sorts of deprivation for photography. The best part was in one of the corridors that span a mile or so underground. I walked into a destroyed bathroom and saw someone talking a shit, or so I thought. Someone taped jeans and shoes to the toilet. That was terrifying. I've had some weird experiences. One time me and my best friend took pictures in his backyard for a school project. We were going to try to edit ourselves into a different background, using paint or whatever. When I got home he messaged me he was scared and had something to show me. The next day he brought prints of 2 of the original images to school. You could see 2 girls vaguely in the background on one, then the same girl in a slightly different spot on the other one. This was very early so Photoshop wasn't widely spread as it is today. First I thought he was messing with me, but he was genuinely scared. He didn't want to go in the backyard again and he deleted all those pictures. When I was a teen, me and my mom lived in a very old house in the city. It was narrow with lots of stairs. Going up the stairs I always turned the light on and ran because I felt something following me. I know that's just a feeling, but I'm adding it in because in later apartments I had zero fear in the dark. It was that place. One night I couldn't sleep and I was tossing and turning. I was laying on my side and my sheets didn't fully cover me. Suddenly I felt something tickle my back leg. It wasn't gentle but quite firm. It felt like someone dropped a massive spider on my leg, which I thought because I have a fear of spiders. I literally jumped out of bed so fast, my heart was racing. I was genuinely startled. Turned the sheets inside out, nothing, door closed. Window closed. I also had what I think was an out-of-body experience there. It was very similar to sleep paralysis, but the thing was, while I could feel myself laying on the bed not being able to move, I was also standing in my room looking at myself laying on the bed. 2 perspectives. I swear I was walking around and even opened the window, which was in fact closed but opened when I woke up. I was then jolted back into my body and could move again. My mom also started sleepwalking while we lived there and she told me later that she often had dreams of floating on the ceiling. I remember the attic, it had no door but it was pitch black. One time I went up there with some friends to shoot a video for school and it was just ridden with orbs, just a really scary place. To finish off maybe a more wholesome story. When my dad died, he wanted his ashes to be scattered in our city's river. It was a really cloudy gray day. The moment he was put to water the clouds opened up and there was a rainbow across the river, right above my office building. It was gone again a few minutes later. I've been feeling down the last few months and asked my dad for a sign, and sure enough, I saw a rainbow 15 minutes later, also gone after a few minutes. No. I have worked a lot in old buildings that people swore were haunted. They swore they'd seen or heard things. I have countless hours as the only person in said buildings. And nothing. Nor have I ever seen or heard of anything that supported the paranormal. It is amazingly simple to fool our brains. Our senses are notoriously easy to confuse. Besides, for decades there have been massive prizes, the most notable from the amazing Randy is a cool $1 million, for anyone that can provide verifiable evidence of the paranormal. There has never been a payout. I've never experienced anything paranormal while fully conscious, but I get sleep paralysis every so often, and while I know that it's just my brain playing tricks on me, things sure do feel real in the moment. I've had terrifying visions/feelings while being stuck between the awake and asleep states. I have to say that this is a difficult conclusion that I've only come to realize after 30-some years of experience. I'm a natural skeptic and trust in science to deliver the answer. When it comes to verifying the existence of the paranormal, you require very specific results within a given circumstance, in which you need to isolate the incident from any other possible explanation. You also need to have a substantial amount of these incidents or results to accept it as true. And sure, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, it would be very difficult to mark anything paranormal as true, without having some natural explanation or explained as a fraudulent case. Back then all we could do was sit on the mystery and try to find causes to explain what happened logically in a normal, natural setting. But in this day and age where there are more ghost/cryptid sightings than before and the people reporting by documenting them on the internet, it's becoming more and more difficult to disprove these kinds of videos. Sure, one can argue it is still possible to fabricate these videos, but the amount of effort needed to create these videos would require a lot of time, money and skill, something that most of us just can't afford to do. And people who post these videos go out of their way now to show they are not joking. And again, the sheer number of these videos alone says that these incidents are happening everywhere. And some of these videos are simply beyond explanation. Therefore, my conclusion is, in short, that while I cannot prove that ghosts, demons, cryptids or otherwise specifically exist, I believe there is some abnormal energies that are beyond our normal realm of existence. So is it paranormal? I'm putting money on yes. No. Where are all the ghosts of dinosaurs and flies and stuff? Why only ever humans or pets? And why can spirits only communicate in riddles and odd hints? And those who can apparently communicate with the dead call it a gift, so why do they charge you money for the messages? Gifts are free. They charge because they are con artists. There is no soul. Living organisms are a meat bag with chemical reactions and electrical impulses firing. These create what we call consciousness. Once the firing of those neurons stops, the consciousness is gone. That's it. We are back in the same place as we were before conception. I absolutely do. But not just regular old random paranormal events. I went through an insanely intelligent, perfectly timed event. From 2002 to 2016 my bedroom closet door would open by itself on January 1st of every year. I didn't realize that it was the same exact day until around 2013, so I never documented it. What the hell could that be? I'm not sure at all. Yesterday something weird happened to me. I felt tired so I got slept. First I clearly remember myself taking off my scarf and my glasses, but, at 6 a.m., when I awaken, I'm with the glasses and the scarf again. No way, I had taken them off just 7 hours ago. Not really, not in the contemporary sense. Urban legends and pop culture concepts like ghosts, spirits, UFOs, all of that is nonsense. However, that doesn't mean they're not interesting. Ghosts and aliens and other common monster tropes are basically just caricatures of the human psyche. It's very built into our lizard brains to be afraid of pale, misshapen, non-human entities with lidless eyes and expressionless faces. The myths we create are just manifestations of those instincts. Our brains are very powerful. There's a reason why all of our monsters are either vaguely human, vaguely reptilian, or vaguely insectoid. That's our survival instinct at work. Nope. I'd love it if there was such a thing. I've spent my life going and looking when people told me about UFO, and ghosts etc. hoping to see something. 50 years and counting. Nada. Zip. Zero. Zilch. No I don't, but it doesn't mean I run back up the stairs to my room in the dark in the middle of the night after going to the toilet and jump back into bed under my covers before the guy from Scream catches me. But during the day or when the light's on I'm fine. I do because of some weird experiences I have had. I know I am not crazy because an ex-girlfriend of mine was with me with many of them. Also, using a spirit box I had some very intelligent responses. I asked their name and I had the reply of the former homeowner who had their parents living there at one point, and I suspect one or both may have passed due to natural causes in that home. Just some really freaky stuff. I lived in a house for one summer 40 years ago and had too many weird things happen that I became a believer. Never saw a ghost, though. I am still very skeptical when I hear stories, but I think some things just can't be explained. I haven't lived long enough, but when I was starting school I used to sense and see things that weren't there in the corner of my eye at places, and I still do now. In the third house I lived in, I moved many houses. I would say I was about 6-7 years old, and there's one thing that I will always remember about this house to the day I die. Keep this in mind, I had about 4 pets, 2 dogs and 2 cats at the time, and every night when I went to sleep I would turn my lamp off and my parents would shut my door, which is probably what almost every kid would normally do. This one night I'm by myself and my parents had already gone to bed, and my door was shut and my lamp was still on. Lay down, turned the lamp off and then try falling asleep. Somewhere halfway through the night I get a soft nudge at my foot of bed. I look up and at the foot of my bed I see a large-sized dog that looked like a cross between a Labrador and a Husky with red eyes staring straight at me. It couldn't be my other dogs because the door was closed, and they are both Stoffies, which are short dogs but also big, like the size of the gray dog from Lady and Tramp. This dog is just sitting at the end of the bed and staring straight into my soul. I fall as fast asleep as I can, and the next morning I wake up and the door is still closed like the night before. I tell my parents and they don't believe me and say it was probably just a dream, which to this day they still joke about now. Last year during my mother's birthday we got her a dog to replace her dog that was due to tumor in 2021 a week before my birthday. A couple of weeks Mom finds out what the cross of the breed is, a Labrador and Husky, and it's fully black, and gives Mom and I soft nudges all the time like it wants something. Is this just a coincidence or not? The house we live in now is the house we moved in after that house, and many weird things happen where the power randomly switches off and the TV turns on in the middle of the night when everyone is asleep, and I always sense like something is watching me in my room 24/7. We live out of town now, so it's a lot more quieter and peaceful, but from the beginning something has always been up with house, for the fact this house has also been moved from a different town about 2 hours away. I'd if you believe me, but these things have really happened. No. There's no hard reason. I just never have. It's like religion. I've never had that kind of faith in any of that stuff, so I don't believe in any god. I'm willing to be wrong though, I just need to experience it myself. No. I've never seen anything remotely paranormal in nearly 40 years of life, and have never been told about a paranormal encounter that didn't have reasonable alternative explanations. It is far more probable that people are misinterpreting their senses, experiencing confusion or hallucinations, or falling prey to bias, seeing what they want or have been taught to be real, than that allegedly paranormal things that can never be definitively proven are real. I'm not saying it's impossible for ghosts, demons, monsters, etc. to exist, just that it's highly improbable and far less probable than human error, which is something that can be proven to happen all the time. The day I experience something that has no reasonable alternative explanation, which includes my own brain being wonky, which is something I have no trouble accepting, is the day I will believe in the paranormal. But only that one thing. The fact that I really, honestly saw a Sasquatch or whatever doesn't prove that ghosts etc. exist, too. I believe in things for which evidence exists. Hundreds of years of people trying, and we have zero proof that anything supernatural isn't either a hoax, a trick, or people who are either high, ill, or hallucinating. If that kind of stuff existed, in a way that could actually influence our world, then by this point it would have been found and documented to the point that we knew it as a fact that it existed. I've believed in the paranormal for as long as I can remember. I've always had a feeling that the human body is a vessel, and when we die, our physical bodies obviously won't work anymore. But that doesn't mean our soul and energy that we left behind didn't. I feel that energy is eternal. If someone dies in their house or a place where they were very attached, that energy always stays. It kinda embeds itself into the environment. I hope that made some kind of sense, lol. I also had my first paranormal experience at the age of 12-13. I guess I have always believed that various entities that we cannot see are around us. If it were true, someone would have won James Randi's million. After all the millions of attempts, not a single solitary bit of incontrovertible evidence has been offered. I've experienced things I can't explain. But that doesn't automatically mean paranormal. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.